In this video, we're going to show you how to install the brake caliper on your INFINITI G37 X, located behind your front wheels. I want to go ahead and take our caliper and bracket. We want to remove these slider pins here. These are 14 millimeter. I'm going to remove the slider pin bolts, separate the caliper from the bracket. Now I want to slide the pins out here. So we want to separate the pin from the rubber boot. So if you hold that boot and just grab that pin, just twist it, and you're just going to pop that out like so. Now if you notice, there's just a small amount of grease on this, and most of it is down on the end cap here. So you can go ahead and smear that on there. We do want to put a little bit extra, not a giant amount. We just want to make sure that this is properly lubricated. If you put too much, it'll actually push the slider pin out of the caliper bracket, and you don't want that. So if you do happen to have that after you put grease on, pull it back out, remove some of the grease, and reinstall. Go ahead and slide this down, push this down and on, and the boot will reseat onto the slider pin, like so. There we go. Turn that around. So what I just did with the pocket screwdriver here is I just opened up the seal to let out any air that was trapped in there. So it is going to have a little bit of spring to it because you have the rubber boot that is compressed on it. So that's just natural. So if you peel back that rubber boot just a tiny bit without tearing it, do not tear that, and press down on that pin. I'm going to go ahead and do the same to the other side. This one here actually had a good amount of grease on it. It was just down on the end cap, so I just moved that and put that around there. I don't have to add any more extra to that. I'm going to do the same thing here. Just slide that down, pop that boot on. Work that a little bit. Our next step is we want to go ahead and apply a little bit of grease to where the sliders are going to go for our pads. Thin coat, remember, not big globs. Go ahead and smear that around. Let's go ahead and install our shim. Now if you look at your sliders here, there are two different ones. This one here with these ears or tabs, those need to be positioned on the top of the caliper itself. So you can go ahead and position this here, how it would go on the vehicle. On our vehicle, the bleeder screw is going to be on the top inside. So this is going to be the top side of the bracket. That happens to be the side that we had greased. Go ahead and take your slider and we're going to pop this in. Now the sliders have little metal tabs on the inside to pretty much line these up. You can't really screw that up. As long as they seat down, push them down all the way. Then you're going to flip this over and do the same thing over here. Pop that into place. Do not put grease on the top side of the slides. That's going to just get dirt to stick in there and going to cause issues. So at this point, our slider pins are greased. Everything's working as it should. Sliders are in. This is ready to install. Using a 21 millimeter socket, loosen and remove your lug nuts. Now on our particular vehicle, we have a locking lug nut. We have the key to remove it. If you just have a standard lug nut, go ahead and take it off. Once you have those removed, Remove the wheel and set it aside. We're going to go ahead and replace our caliper and bracket. In order to do so, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove this 12mm banjo bolt from the flex hose, pull this out. I'm going to replace the bolt with new copper washers, and I'm going to install this line on our new caliper. Let's go ahead and do that. Now we do have a catch can underneath. You are going to lose some brake fluid from the hose as well as the caliper. So have something underneath to catch that fluid. Let me go ahead and remove this bolt. Now on this hose here, you should have 2 copper washers. There's one here. Might have to pry that off. There's one, and there's one on the other side. These must be replaced when performing this job. We're going to take our new banjo bolt, put a copper washer on that. You can go ahead and feed that right through. Install the other new copper washer on the other side of the banjo bolt. Go ahead and line this up. Get that bolt started. Now the flex hose has a little tab on it that lines up. It lines up with the caliper itself. There's a little notch there, so that'll fit right on. Super easy. And then we're going to snug that down. The replacement bolt is an 11mm. Go ahead and snug that down. Let's give this a quick wipe. And all we're going to do is we're going to kind of swing this over here right now and set that on top. Now we do want to go ahead and secure the caliper itself, so you can use one of these hooks here. You can use a strap, anything like that. You just want to make sure that the caliper doesn't drop and pull on this flex hose. So hang that off of our upper control arm. Now at this point, we can go ahead and remove our caliper from the bracket. We're going to be using our pads. So let's go ahead and do that. Using a 14mm socket, go ahead and remove the slider pin bolts. Now in most cases, if you're going to be doing something like this here, you want to go ahead and replace your brake pads and probably your rotors at the same time. In our particular case, our pads are new, so we're going to reuse those. I'm going to go ahead and remove the caliper bracket itself. We're going to remove our 22mm bolts on the back side here. When you remove the upper bolt, hold on to the bracket. You don't want that to fall on your foot. Grab the new bracket, line that up. Install the bolt. Always want to start these bolts by hand. Go ahead and snug those down. And we're going to install our brake pads here. And the key thing about installing the brake pads is right here we have the squeak tab. Now the squeak tabs are going to be on both the outer pad as well as the inner pad. And that is why we have those tabs on the top of the sliders. what you need to do is this tab needs to go inside the loop of the squeak tab. So you're gonna slide that into that, rotate the pad into position into the slide. Press that in. Let's go ahead and do the same for the inboard. Okay, you can see those spring tabs want to naturally just push those pads out, and that's what they're supposed to do. Now at this point, go ahead and unhook your caliper. Go ahead and swing this down. Now you might have to push in on the slider pins and push in on the pads, get everything to fit into place. I'm going to install the upper bolt first. Once you get that started, a few threads, you can go ahead and let go of that. That'll hold it in place. And then get the lower one installed. Just kind of wiggle that caliper around until that lines up. All right, let's go ahead and snug those down. And we're going to torque our caliper bolts to the caliper bracket to 20 foot-pounds. Now the caliper bracket to the knuckle, we're going to torque those to 98 foot-pounds. Now the banjo bolt itself really just needs to be snugged down to the point where it's not leaking. The copper washers will seal. If you want a torque spec, you're going to be in the ballpark of about 8 foot-pounds. At this point here, after you've done that, you want to go ahead and use some spray solvent. Just give it a quick spray, wipe this down. On the back side of the caliper itself, you're going to find the bleeder screw. There should be a rubber boot here. I'm going to use a little pocket screwdriver. If you want, you can grab it by hand, but sometimes you just can't pop it off. We're going to remove this rubber boot. We're going to be reusing this, so don't lose it. Now you want to open up this bleeder screw, 10 millimeter. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for air bubbles to pop out of this little port here in the center, and then we're looking for a solid stream of fluid to start coming out. What's happening is the fluid is coming through the flex hose, filling up the backside of the caliper or the piston area, and then coming up, and it's going to purge out any little air bubbles in there. Now this could take a few minutes to wait for that to happen, so just kind of hang tight and we'll watch for that. Now sometimes what you can do is go up underneath the hood and open up the reservoir for the master cylinder, and that will help the gravity bleed speed up a little bit. Now we have some dripping here going on, but we're going to let that continue to go for a short bit. We're going to check for any air bubbles. And we see that the pace of that fluid is speeding up. And it's looking pretty steady now, and there's no more air bubbles coming out of this. So at this point, we can go ahead and snug this down. Once that bleeder screw bottoms out, just snug it a little bit more. You don't have to make it super tight, just make it snug. Give that a wipe. And we're going to install our rubber cap. After you've done this here, hop into the vehicle, pump up that brake pedal. It might take 2 to 3 pumps for this whole caliper to compress, and then that pedal should firm up. Start up the vehicle, repeat that process, and you want to hold the brake pedal to the floor. Hold it firmly. If that slowly starts to compress down, you want to come back and repeat the brake bleeding process. It could take 1 to 2 times to get out any of the additional air. For any reason, after that there, it continues to go to the floor, you want to go ahead and start the brake bleeding process for the entire vehicle. At that point there, you should have a firm pedal, install your wheel, and you're all set. With the hood open, locate your brake cover here for the master cylinder, push on these tabs, and pull up on this cover, set it aside. Once we have the cover off, you want to go ahead and spray and clean up the cover itself. Make sure you don't get any debris into the master cylinder. Just going to use some regular solvent to do this. Clean everything up. Once that's clean, you want to go ahead and pull off the cover and set that aside. Inside the reservoir, there's going to be a little screen. You want to go ahead and reach in and pull that out. Make sure you grab a rag to capture that. We're going to be reusing this here. Let's go ahead and set that aside. Our next step, go ahead and grab a container that you can use to put the fluid. Now you can use a vacuum tool such as this here or a turkey baster or something like that to go ahead and pull that fluid out. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses when performing a job like this. Be careful not to get this on the vehicle's paint. If you do, you need to immediately clean it. Get and wipe down the cover here. Remove that old fluid and put that away somewhere. Now go ahead and grab the appropriate brake fluid recommended for the vehicle, and we're going to fill this up. With it filled up to that max line, go ahead and grab that screen, drop that inside, grab that cover, and install that. Now we're starting our brake bleeding process on the right rear of the vehicle. Now we have someone inside the vehicle. What they're going to do is they're going to pump up the brakes 3 to 4 times and hold pressure. Then I'm going to go ahead and open up this bleeder screw. This is going to relieve any air bubbles in here. When that comes out, it's going to go into our external reservoir here to capture that fluid. We're going to do that a few times until there's no more air bubbles coming out of the line. Then after that, we're going to seal this up. We're going to clean it. Then we're going to go to the left front wheel. We're going to repeat that process there. Then to the left rear wheel. Repeat that process. And then we're going to close with the right front wheel. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to be using an 8mm socket on this here. You may have to apply some rust penetrant to this, or maybe apply a little bit of heat to get this bleeder screw to loosen. We did inspect the fluid in the reservoir and make sure that it was topped off. Let's go ahead and start. Go ahead and pump up the pedal. we're going to put on our hose here. We're going to use our 8mm. While they're holding that pedal, we're going to open this up. And what we're looking for is air bubbles coming through that line. So we'll close this. Once their pedal goes to the floor inside, we'll close this, then they're going to pump it up again. Go ahead. And this is looking pretty good so far. Go ahead again. All right, we have no air bubbles left in this line. We're going to close this up. We're going to remove our bleeder hose here. Now, if you have any brake fluid coming out of this here, go ahead and use some solvent, spray that down, and let's go ahead and we're going to repeat this process for the left front. Now we're up here on the left front wheel. I'm going to put this on. Okay, go ahead and pump it up. All right, while they're holding it, we're going to open that. You can see the bubbles coming through. We're going to close that up. Repeat. Again. Again. You can see we're still getting air bubbles in this here. Again. Okay, we have a solid stream of fluid coming through. Now at this point, we're going to close this up. We're going to pull this off. Our next step is to go ahead and top off the master cylinder with brake fluid. Go ahead. Fill this up to the max line using the appropriate fluid. Once that's topped off, we're going to now move to the left rear wheel. We're going to bleed that and then move to the right front wheel and bleed that wheel there. Once you're completed, you want to top off the reservoir one last time. You're going to clean up any residual fluid that might be up here, and then we'll put our cover back on. Hop into the vehicle, pump up that brake pedal. Make sure that brake pedal is nice and firm. If it does not firm up, you want to go ahead and repeat this brake bleeding process one more time. That should clear everything up. But if it does pump up firm the first time, perfect. Go ahead and install your wheels, torque the lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. At that point there, you're all set. So go ahead and install your wheel. Install your lug nuts. Once we get all these installed, we'll go ahead and snug them down. Use our locking key. Go ahead and torque down your lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. We're going to use our locking key first. Then we'll continue with the rest in a crisscross pattern. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.